Domestic abuse affects 1 in 5 women in Britain, and on average 2 women a week are killed by their partner or ex-partner. As a society, we struggle to understand the enormity of this abuse, can't really understand why someone who purports to love their partner would be so cruel to them. Is it drugs that cause it? Is it alcohol? Mental health? All of these problems are used as an excuse by an abuser. The reality is he wishes to exert total power and control over their lives. We're very fortunate here. We live in a beautiful part of the country in Perthshire. We see the lovely scenic beauty around us each day and the peace and calm of the surrounding countryside. But the reality for many who live with domestic abuse is such a stark contrast to this peace and tranquility. One woman who would like to share her story with you is Cilla. This is Cilla's story.
I first met my partner through mutual friends. We used to go out together for drinks and have a laugh and enjoy each other's company. And then a month or so we ended up in a relationship together. What attracted me to him was his great sense of humour. He was outgoing, he was fun, he was life and soul of the party, centre of attention, and that's the sort of person that I enjoyed their company. The abuse started about 3 months into the relationship. That was when I jumped out a window to get away from him. First floor, I landed on the bins, fractured my wrist because he accused me of taking money off him that I didn't, but he says I did. And the only way out was to get out the window, and I had to try and lock myself in a room and get out that way. When I was out and about with them, I didn't enjoy going out the further we got into the relationship because he was possessive, and I basically walked with my head facing the pavement because any direction I looked, I was looking at another man. I was basically signaling another man that I wanted to be with him, and it was horrible. It was this thing I would have rather stayed indoors, but he wouldn't let me stay indoors because he'd accuse me of cheating if he was out on his own. So he always wanted me there, but it just made me feel sick all the time having to go out because I knew he was constantly watching me and he would just say what he wanted anyway, even though it wasn't true. I'd have to avoid people that I've known for years, and they would look at me as if to say, why is she ignoring me? But it wasn't worth it. What usually happened after being out, he would build things up and you would watch him, and you'd know the weekend my son was away that something, I was going to pay the price for something. It was always telltale signs, little digs about what you had done when you were out. So you knew basically what was going to happen. So I used to dread a Friday when my son was going to go and stay with his granny or his dad's. He would do the washing, the ironing, the shopping. He'd get my son's stuff ready for school. He'd get my stuff ready. He'd fill a bath for me. He'd basically tell me, there's a bath there for you, which meant you have to go in that bath. He would do hoovering, basically everything. That would make me feel useless. That either I was doing something wrong or I wasn't capable of doing these things. At first though, it was good though, because I thought, oh, isn't that nice? He wants to do these things, and who wants to really do the ironing and do that? But after a while it was like a control thing. He had to do everything for me. He'd always just wait. He'd wait until my son was away, that was it. As long as if my son or any other child that came to see him, or actually anybody in particular, he wanted to be loved by all friends, family, everybody. He wanted them to see something different from what I used to see. I think many people see it quite blindly actually. If it's just an argument, you see it as a slap, or it's just something silly that's caused that argument. It's not, it's built up. I mean, he could wait basically a week before he done anything to me he used to make sure that my son was away. So it's not just on a spur of the moment thing, oh, right, you've done this. This was built up through a week, so he knew exactly what he was going to do from, if it was a Monday, by the Friday, he'd have all these things in their head and probably multiplied them by the time it got to the weekend. The final straw when I left my ex-partner was the last assault, which was a 7-hour assault. It's an assault I'll never forget. It'll always be there. I'm going to have to stop a second because this bit gets me. Oh. Yeah. The final straw for leaving my partner was at the 7-hour assault. Basically, I could have died that night. He was acting his usual strange self, and it was just little things that, niggly little things, just his facial expressions, anything, his attitude, his whole mannerism, even actually the tension, you could see it in his body. One of the telltale signs is usually brings the sofa across. He brought the sofa across, blocked the exits so I couldn't get out. Then he would break my phone and he'd smash it into pieces to make sure that I couldn't communicate. And then the first thing, as you know, is he's punched you in the face. But it's not just one punch, it's punch after punch. Then he's got his hands round your throat until you pass out. But you wake up and you think it's a dream. But it's not a dream. Reality kicks in. That you're not getting out of that room. Oh, you came back unconscious. He'd start again. He'd punch at you. He'd kick at you. I remember in the corner of the room, trying to hide, protect my face because he's kicking at me. But he's not just like a little tap kicking, he's actually bringing his leg up and the foot of his shoe, well, his boot, is trying to get me right in the face. I remember because my whole body was in agony while he was just kicking and kicking and kicking, and then he'd try and punch you while you're still down there, so you're trapped in this corner. And then he'd get you back up and he'd drag you back up by the hair and throw you in the sofa. And I remember him throwing cigarette ends at me. And then that wasn't good enough, so he would strangle me again, and I'd pass out again, and then I'd wake up. So it was like this reoccurring nightmare, just kept happening. And then I remember him taking me upstairs to wash the blood off me, because he didn't like seeing the blood on me. So he took me up the stairs, washed me, and then because I started crying, I remember him punching me again, because I remember I landed in the bath. And he dragged me back up by the hair again and took me back down the stairs again and continued where he left off the last time. I think it must have been 4 times he had choked me. 4 times I'd passed out. But by the 4th time it was like, just end it. You want a way out. Because you would scream for help and nobody was coming. This lasted 7 hours.
And how did it come to you?
He had a hammer over my head. And then there was a knock at the door. And it was the police. But the strange thing was, he let me go. 7 hours he had made me suffer this. And as soon as I knocked at the door, he went, go and answer the door. like nothing had happened. And then he was arrested there and then. And I was taken to hospital. But as he was leaving, the first thing he said was, "She's cut my lip." Because it's just something that's always stuck in my head. She's cut his lip. Yet my face was swollen like a balloon and my hair was matted. But he was concerned with this cut lip. So one of the policemen took me to the hospital. This was one of the officers that remained with me throughout so we could build a case against my ex. He came to my hospital appointments. Well, I had my forensic appointments. He was the one that actually got me out of my bed to go to my forensic appointments because, to be honest, I didn't want to leave the house. And he'd be standing over me going, "Right, it's time to go." So he was good because he gave me motivation to keep going. Because, to be honest, you just wanted to hide under a duvet and stay there. But he took me. And we built quite a good relationship out of that. The forensic doctor had told me that I took at least 35 plus kicks to the head alone. I'd been strangled to the point that it was millimetres off my neck to a main artery, and says that he wanted this as an attempted murder because basically he was out to kill me, because you wouldn't strangle somebody just for the sake of it. And he went, "It's not a breach of the peace for sure," because I remember him saying that. But I had bruises on my feet, on my toes, on my hands. There wasn't actually a part of me that didn't have a bruise. And then I had to go, after the forensic doctors, I had to go to Bell Street in Dundee for more photos, and they pick out the grazing and where these marks were, and just to make sure you've not done it to yourself. The outcome of the case was that it got dropped from attempted murder to a GBH, or it was a severe assault. It was nothing anyway compared to the attempted murder it started at, and that would give him the sentence of 3 years 11 months, which he would do half of that and out within 2. I don't feel satisfied at all for the fact that if it was an attempted murder, it should have stayed an attempted murder. Why should he be able to make less of it? Why is he listened to when it started as an attempted murder in the first place? Somebody, a professional, looked at these photos, looked at me and seen what it should have been, but he could bargain his way, and that disgusts me. You'd wonder, after me jumping out a window, why wouldn't I leave? But I had these words in my head that were stuck in my head, and knowing who he hung about with and who he was associated with, I would never doubt these words. And he told me that he could have me killed for a £5, and knowing his past as well and his history, I wouldn't even attempt to go. My life has moved on dramatically. I went to college to study social care. I met my new partner. We've got a 5-month baby, and now I'm working with women that are high risk victims to domestic abuse. So I'm loving life now.